Legal thing. If in doubt, get a proper mechanic. So, this is part one of the Yaris SR 1.8 Tein, or Tein, I think it's Tein, coilover kit install. So we have the coilover kit arrived here. Very nice. Made in Japan, like the car. The 5 doors were made in Japan. So Japanese parts going on a well-built, well-finished Japanese car. It also comes with drop links, which I wasn't expecting. I probably won't need those, as I recently did the drop links on the Yaris not too long ago. So here we go. Here is the Yaris 1.8 SR UK spec, running 138 horsepower, 173 pounds of torque. That's been dynoed. It is a lightweight, stripped out car. We've got battery relocate, ultra racing rear strut. It's got ultra racing front strut as well. That's the isolator for the battery. Everything that I can has been taken out. It's running Voigtland lowering springs at the minute. We've got an ultra racing 16mm rear sway bar, which is absolutely excellent. And the first part of this install is taking the wheels off after you've jacked the car up, and then removing the rear damper bolts, which are two 14mm heads on this Yaris, and that will enable me to drop the rear torsion bar and get those springs out. Handy tip I've learned is that when you remove the damper bolts and nut, to jack up the rear torsion beam a little bit, just so you can get them out. Now this car is a 2007, 75,000 miles, and look at the rust on that rear subframe. It all appears surface rust at the minute, but over time that will deteriorate and end the car's life. So I'm going to have to treat that while I do this job. So this is with the springs removed. Once you lower the jack, they just pull out. You need to reuse the rubber isolators on both ends. Don't throw those away. Now I could do a proper job and drop the rear subframe and treat it, but honestly I have not got time, so I'm just using direct to metal paint, just giving it a treat and a bit of a wire brush. This is another area where the Yaris has a potential rust related failure. This is the fuel filler pipe, which again has got some surface rust on. It's a common issue on Toyotas, affects the Yaris as well. This eventually will need replacing, so that's definitely something for me to keep my eye on. Doesn't look too bad at the minute. 75,000 mile car, 2007. So basically I've just painted the rear torsion bar. This car's got a Fox back box, custom Fortney Sport centre pipe, and there's the 16mm ultra racing rear sway bar, which is the best mod I've ever had on this car. So after that, the next step is to loosen, remove the nuts on the top of each strut, which I've done, and remove the rear sway bar. Once you've loosed the nuts on the top, the dampers will literally just pull out, and that leaves these parts here, which are reused on the Tein suspension. So this is one of the dampers, 75,000 miles, 2007 car, original Toyota part. Now I've pushed that in and literally it's stuck there. So I would say that my dampers are in need of replacement, which allows me to justify the cost of the Tein kit and doing it now for the benefit of the tape. So here we go, these are both the original Yaris rear dampers slash suspension unit slash struts. As you can see, I've pushed that one in and no movement. Now the parts that you do need to keep in this install is you need to keep this part here, which has got like a metal top piece, and then it's actually cut where that line is, and then that's reused in the Tein ones. And in the meantime we have a hungry cat, and then we have bunnies running around the rear garden. There's one. So they're having a nice time before they go back in the hutch because it's absolutely... So after cutting these with a sharp knife, don't use a butter knife, should have these pieces here. As you can see, a bit rusty after 75,000 miles. 2007, 2022 now. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Miss a few 150 years old. These bits I don't think you need again, but I will keep them. And then these are the parts that you reuse, and I'm going to spray everything with GT85, which I use on my cycles. Right, so now I'm going to start building the rear strut. The Tein instructions are actually quite good because they give you all the parts laid out, and then they tell you where the vehicle body is. And then this is for the springs, and again you've got the body at the top and you've got the trailing beam there, so should be quite straightforward. These parts here, the washer, the nuts, they go above the body. These parts here, including the new dust cover, go below the body. Just to show you how bad my dampers were, here we go. And that's what a damper should do. So interestingly, the Tein instructions say dust cover, which is this metal part here which you have to cut off. The OE bump rubber cap metal must be used. Cut off all plastic dust cover from metal cap, which I've done. And then it's got the rubber bush here, which says OEM because it's got 3 dashes, and then it's got a rubber bush above it. Now this, I'm pretty sure, goes in the inside of the vehicle, so I'm not too sure why we've got 2 rubber bushes there. And also this part here is actually inside this dust cap. It does come out, and the Tein coilovers have a collar here. It doesn't mention this part here, so I'm going to try it without that and see what happens. If it's wrong, I'll have to take it back apart, but it will not fit with this metal collar. Now this stage is actually a lot easier if you have 2 persons or 4 sets of hands. So you need to push the damper up, and then I've just screwed that top nut on lightly just to hold it in place. Underneath, when we go to refit the damper, I'll be using new Toyota bolt and nut. I can't do that just yet because I've still got these springs to put in, but that is how it goes in. So both dampers are now installed. The I'm using my jack as an extra pair of hands just to thread the top of the damper through, so I can then just put the nut on and just hold that in place so it doesn't drop down. And there we go. Now we're ready for the springs. So the next part of the recipe is to assemble the rear spring assembly. Bottom isolator, coil end facing to the rear. This washer goes onto the flat spring on the top. Then you have the adjustment piece, and in hindsight I should have ordered a new one of these because mine is split. However, given that these springs are quite easy to drop down, I will actually proceed with this one, order a new one, and then retrofit that later. So that actually goes on the top here, and that's one of the OE pieces that you reuse. I'm now going to attempt to set the spring height using calipers. I'm just going to give it a height approximately and do the same on the other side so that I know you know, how to adjust it. And before starting the work, I actually measured the distance between the fender and the center of the wheel, so I have a measurement to work with. So before proceeding with the install, it is good to check that you've not forgotten anything. I'd actually forgot an extra rubber bush just at the top there. I've now rectified that. I'm using the jack as an extra pair of hands, and that's one spring almost in position, just needs some final adjustment. The next part isn't easy at all. As you can see, it's now dark, and my wife had to help me with this. You have to line the springs up, the dampers up, and at the same time making sure that you manage to get them through the hole. The Tein recommends 25 millimeters, so 2.5 centimeters between the bottom of the adjuster and that washer. It doesn't give a torque spec for that, and I can't find one in the Toyota guide. Hardest part of this part of the install is getting the spring located. Very difficult on your own. As you can see, there's some of the rust there. It looks a lot worse for the fuel pipe, but there we go. Oh, there's the wife's Civic Type R FN2, and here we go. Here is the Yaris. Rear strut, lower damper torque, 49 Newton meters from the Toyota guide, and all I need to do now is measure how much drop I've put on them. I've torqued the locks as much as I can, and there we go. I think it's dropped a bit. I don't want to go too low, but I'm quite happy with that.